again to Geraumt, your podcast for design, information, and space. This podcast is in English again, and we have quite an interesting topic for this podcast prepared. My name is Christian Lunger. I'm an experimental graphic designer, and the topic for today has all to do about what I'm passionate about. It's about healthy city design and the Healthy City Design Conference that is taking place from 11th to 14th of October. And I have two talking partners for today's podcast, and I'm very excited to talk to them. First is Marc Sansom. He's a founding director of SALUS Global Knowledge Exchange. SALUS, to understand the company, is a global media publishing and research, events, and training organization. They have the vision to improve the human and the planetary health by design. And what they do, they bring communities together. And the second partner is Professor Jeremy Myerson. He's an academic, he's an author, he's an activist in design, a terminology I really like. And he has co founded the Helen Hamlin Center for Design. And he's quite dedicated as well to the topic of inclusive design, design thinking, and creative leadership. And there's a new book out from him as well. It's called Designing a World for Everyone 30 Years of Inclusive Design. And those two, I think, can give a very good insight on what the Healthy City Design Conference is. And we will talk, of course, about the underlying topic, healthy design and cities. So thank you very much for your time. I'm looking forward to talking to you. We've agreed we'll start with what the Healthy City Design Conference is all about. Basically, what are we looking forward to listening in October?
Thank you, Christian. It's delighted to have the opportunity to join you today, together with Jeremy, who is our fabulous partner with the Royal College of Art for the Healthy City Design Congress. So why did we launch Healthy City Design? We launched it, I think, 5 years ago now. So this is the 5th edition of the Congress. It really was designed to really take on the work of SALUS to another level, particularly in relation to how we look at the relationship between designing for human and planetary health. We recognise that more and more people are living in urban environments, and urban health is really at the heart of how we move and develop and progress society. And the role of design, of course, is critical to that. You know, how we design everything around us, from our housing to our transport to our workplace, to our homes, to our public realm, to our parks. These are the contexts in which we live our daily lives, and in which as citizens we either improve our health or we find ourselves leading less healthy lives through the activities or the environments that we move through. So the Congress was really developed because many conferences are very vertical in their nature. You know, they look at individual sectors, and aligning to many of the principles of Healthy City or of SALUS, this conference was really designed to look across sector, look at all the impacts on our daily lives that the city has in terms of both health and sustainable development. So bringing together researchers, practitioners, and policy thinkers around those themes.
And I'd add, from a Royal College of Art perspective, we were very interested in what we thought was a fissure, a gap between urban planners and architects and public health professionals. They used to work hand in glove. If you go back to Victorian England, you know, the slums were cleared, sanitation was put in. The planning of our cities went hand in hand with public health. And somewhere in the late 20th century, this this very close relationship unraveled. So, in a sense, you could say that the Healthy City Design Congress is bringing these two spheres back together, bringing these two communities into one forum so they can share ideas. And that really has been one of the driving forces of this Congress.
Mhm. One of the reasons I was looking forward to talking to you was because I attended another conference you organized, the European Healthcare Design Conference. That was like the first reason. I know how deep your program was there. And well, the program for the Healthy City Design Conference is out already. I know that is as rich as it was for the other conference. So that fascinated me. The second thing is I read, of course, a lot of things as well, after COVID started, and though there came a lot of articles on the market, especially making this argument that you just made, Jeremy, that the modern cities kind of developed in the early stages from a sanitary aspect. So they developed because people wanted to live more healthy in these kind of urban surroundings. And as an experimental designer, quite I'm fascinated. So I'm quite happy that it all takes this kind of integral approach as well, regarding how can we plan future cities that are healthy. Well, we have to work together, and there's many different people that can bring something on the table. Did I understand that correctly when I looked through the program and looked through the conference?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the conference program has a governing theme, and this year we've called it "Back from the Brink" because we believe that during the global pandemic, cities were really on the brink. Food supply was disrupted. Um, Patterns of work were disrupted, commuting into cities was disrupted. There were whole areas of large cities which were like ghost towns because the economic model on which they were based, and I'm thinking of large central business districts, with all the offices closed, you weren't getting a population coming into these spaces and supporting local businesses. And there's been a lot of soul searching and rethinking about our cities. And that really is what we wanted to tap into with our latest program, which is why we called it Back from the Brink, because cities are coming back from the brink. They're reimagining what the urban realm could be. And part of that is introducing a dimension of health. And this is why I think it's very, very relevant right now. And from the point of view of experiential graphic design, the experiential quality of cities is incredibly important. If people are going to come back into cities and use them and enjoy them, and feel safe within them and understand the spaces, then all the experiential elements, especially graphic design and wayfinding and so on, they're going to be very important.
Mhm. Um, what I found quite interesting, maybe you can talk about your thought process regarding that. Usually, when we look for conferences regarding the future city, you mostly find the term smart cities. So that's like the topic that is like going around. And I was quite interested in in this different kind of approach, because I think it for me it has more of this human-centered approach. So talking about healthy cities is talking about something that has to be achieved, and usually achieved for the people that are living there. So how did you decide to actually name the conference Healthy City Design Conference?
Well, health is first and foremost our business at SALUS. So, our focus will always be on human and planetary health. I think what you're referring to, which is quite correct, is that many of these other conferences that are looking at things like smart cities, and they're very, very important because we live in a high tech age and a digital age. So we have to recognize the value of that. But digital and tech, are enablers. And in the end, it's health and quality of life that really should be our focus as societies, because health is a resource that we all need. And I think the pandemic has proven that, without our health, there can be no wealth generation. So I think that's really the core aspect of why we recognise health as really should be the driving force behind the way we design societies, and extending that to health on an equitable basis. So understanding, how health equity works, and that unless we have health for all, then we, we're only as strong as our weakest component. And I think how we design cities needs to respond to those drivers.
I mean, we do have a smart city strand to the conference, but actually, compared to other elements of the conference, it's quite small. And I think our viewpoint is that we do not want our urban environments to be governed totally by algorithms and artificial intelligence. We want a livable environment, and we want an intelligible environment in terms of technology. We want cities to do what they're really good at, to be intuitive, to be legible, to be livable. And, we all know that when we're having a great experience in the city, it's often very real and tangible and authentic, and it's not to do with tech. Tech is the enabler, as Mark says. And I think in that hierarchy, I think the human will always come out on top, and human health with it.
We had a theme a couple of years ago called Utopia or Dystopia, and I think that was one of our most successful themes. And if you think about technology in that respect, technology, if it's done in the right way, is a huge enabler and can be incredibly powerful, but it's not the end goal in itself. And I think if one thinks about autonomous vehicles and the potential for autonomous vehicles, on one hand that can be incredibly powerful to help people who are socially isolated, people who are disabled, to get around in a way that they couldn't otherwise do. But on the other hand, it could lead to far more negative things as well. So, I think we have to look at technology and tech through the lens of health, and sustainable development whenever we can.
I mean, if we look at the history of cities, especially the 20th century
Mhm.
story of cities, where some very vibrant communities. I'm thinking the use of freeways in Manhattan in the 1930s, when the controversial planner Ron Moses, sent in motorways basically into urban areas and destroyed them. And it took a long time for people to realize that cities couldn't just be conduits for high speed travel and everyone living in the suburbs, and that urban living had its own rhythm. We've got to avoid in the 21st century the mistakes we made around cities in the 20th century, where we separated people rather than brought them together. So this is really incumbent upon planning to think very carefully, in our design decisions, that we've got to allow cities to breathe. There's got to be more green space, and there's got to be gathering places so that cities do what they do best, which is bring people together for particular experiences.
Uh, that's that's one interesting topic, because whatever topic you pick that is out there as a discussion point, let's stay with the autonomous driving. I, the lens of looking at it from the health perspective, especially if you let's say follow the underlying principle that the World Health Organization is using as well. So a full state of mental, physical, social well-being. So there's already many things that can be looked at. So will it have an impact on these different kind of let's say health measurements for people? For example, will it be more safe? Will there be less toxic fumes because of autonomous driving, or will it bring people together, like elderly people that have better mobility, so they can connect better, they live a social, a more healthy lifestyle regarding a social lifestyle? There's so many different aspects you can look at. Where do you actually open up the conference to all these aspects, or are you trying to give it a little bit of a focus on a specific topic?
I think we're healthy cities. Should be all encompassing. I think, and I think the creativity of bringing different disciplines, different sectors, and the power of that creativity to look towards innovation in the way we design cities, both from a human perspective and tech as an enabler, is incredibly important. So I don't think there's any barriers to that we're putting up to say that we can't look at that topic or that theme. And we evolve and we reflect the way the market is going, as well as trying to lead the market, in the way that we think about these aspects.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would agree with that because the model of the Congress is not a tightly curated, invitation only, expert speaker model. It's an open call for papers
Mhm.
to our communities of academics and practitioners in a range of different fields, from urban planning to public health. And then we see what's on people's mind. We have an overall theme, but it tends to be very, very broad. The resilient city, back from the brink,
Mhm.
utopia or dystopia, something very broad and catch-all. And then we see, what are people thinking about? What are the challenges that they want to address? Where have they done the research? And I find that one of the most interesting aspects of being the academic convener of this event, because you see where people's heads are. And after the pandemic, people are thinking very hard about the relationship between sustainability and health. They're thinking very hard about mental health in particular. They're looking at particularly vulnerable demographics, whether it's young children in cities or older people in cities. They're looking at the benefits of new technologies rather than the technical features of them. What social value is going to derive from a new technology like autonomous vehicles? Um, uh, how can we, hit low carbon targets? Um, how can we change patterns of work so you don't have, very energy consuming office towers with millions of people commuting in and out every day? And I think what the pandemic has shown us is that change is possible and that change is here. We are going to have new patterns of work in a hybrid world of work, which will take some pressure off city centres. And we're going to have different ways of living and communicating and travelling, different patterns, different uses of the city. And I find that very encouraging, to say the least.
As I said, the program is online already. And if you're interested in the conference, the domain name is healthycitiesdesign.global. So healthy cities design written in one word, .global. The conference itself will take place digitally. And although I think many of us are looking forward once we meet real people again during conferences, I still have to say, regarding my experience from the healthcare design conference, it is advantageous regarding your own time management. So it was really easy for me to just pick my presentations that I was interested in and fit it into my work timetable. So that in itself, personally, I think that's quite healthy. I would like to basically ask my finishing questions. They have something to do with health as well, because humor is quite healthy. There's a couple of studies out there. So one of our closing questions is always, when was the last time you laughed full-heartedly? Mark, Jeremy, was there an instant you can share?
Uh, Probably my son. It makes me laugh every day. So we were on an open top bus around London at the weekend with him, and he was so excited, and we had some fun with his puppets and outside all the different landmarks around London, and his experience of the city and seeing it through the eyes of a child for one of the first times. I think was wonderful, actually.
I think for me, my most recent full-hearted laugh was listening again to the great Tom Lehrer, the American satirist, now in his 90s, and some of his greatest work, including Poisoning Pigeons in the Park,
Oh.
which, which is a different take on A Day Out in the City.
Is there a web resource where we can read this specific article, or do you have a book? But that basically leads over probably to the next final questions that we have. A reading tip for our listeners. So that sounds like a good reading tip.
Anything by Tom Lehrer is a great reading tip.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd also add, I've just read a book by Ruta Bregman called Humankind, A Hopeful History. Anyone who wants to be cheered up during the pandemic, who wants to stop getting the daily diet of bad news through the media, read Humankind, because it's an alternative reading of human history to show human spirit of generosity and optimism about the future. It's a really good book.
Mm-hmm. I will put links of these books in the show notes, just for our listeners to know that. Mark, do you have a reading tip?
Oh,
Many.
many. Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't think now, but yeah, many. I find myself listening, particularly since the pandemic, actually, to podcasts just like this one, much more than perhaps reading, full books. But there was a book that I found incredibly valuable, I think, around sleep. The author's name has escaped me, but I'll make sure that I pass that on to you.
Mhm. But do you have a podcast you would recommend that comes to your mind?
There's a podcast I listen to quite regularly called by Dr. Chatterjee on health and well-being, which takes more of an individual perspective on personal well-being, but a very scientific approach, and it's
Mhm.
a very enjoyable listen to. Yeah.
Okay, we can put a link of that in the show notes as well, so that we have direct access to all the resources you mentioned. Um, I'd say we've come around. We targeted 20 minutes. Now it's 23, which is quite a good time. And honestly, I'd be still full of questions. There's so many details we could talk about, but we want to keep that podcast short. So it's as I said, I will put the link of the Healthy City Design Conference in the show notes. And for our listeners, it will take place from the 11th to the 14th October 2021. Personally, this is really very personal. I recommend it. I'm looking forward to listening to a lot of the presentations I've already seen in the program. So I'm looking forward to the conference. Looking forward to listening to you as well, Mark and Jeremy. And thank you very much for your time for this podcast. And I hope we maybe eventually can talk in person as well, not just via digital.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian.